that they had decided that in retaliation they were going to take out a cop, and they decided that the best target would be a D.A.R.E officer because they're on the school, they're by themselves.
That officer never found out how close she came. If you went to school in America, you probably sat through D.A.R.E. You remember the officer, you remember the t-shirt. What you almost certainly don't know is what the program teaches now or how little of the original survived. The man who runs D.A.R.E. today spent 26 years at the Los Angeles Police Department before he took the job.
Frank, I was so delighted when Craig said that you were going to be joining us. I think every one of us have seen that D.A.R.E logo, that D.A.R.E. Man, that is one of the best logos. A guy having come out of the marketing arena, I love your logo. Always have. The T-shirts on the side of a police car, you know what it is instantly. But here's the thing that I'm excited about today. You spent 26 years with LAPD, retired as a captain. And we were talking about this before we started. Chief Daryl Gates in '83 decided to start the D.A.R.E program. And apparently in '84, you became one of the first ever D.A.R.E officers in LA. So, and now you're almost 30 years with D.A.R.E. You've spent more time with D.A.R.E. Right now, you're the president, CEO. You've spent more time at D.A.R.E. than you did in the police department. So yeah, there is no person that I know that would be more qualified to speak to us about this question that I've had. What the hell is going on in our schools today? What are the kids thinking? What are your officers having to do? How do they change the curriculum to suit the needs of the current students? What's going on in the heads? I'll bet it's different than it was when you started in 1984.
Much different. The curriculum is different. The teaching methodologies are different. The whole approach is different. In 1983, 84, the curriculum was developed specifically to address drug abuse, substance abuse.
Right.
And we transitioned to a curriculum that addresses good decision making, regardless of the situation a child might be in.
I like that.
And we teach a decision making model, pretty straightforward, pretty simple. Actually, it's been adopted by a lot of businesses and schools, but it's trying to get that 8-year-old, the 10-year-old, 16-year-old to slow down, think about what you're making your decisions on, what's involved, what the consequences may be, what your choices are. Just don't, just slow down. Nothing's so important that you can't take a couple of seconds to think about it.
Sure.
And apply a decision-making model, and we still use gateway substances for the discussion points in the class, but the decision-making model that is taught can be applied to any situation that might have
so not just drugs, anything. Huh?
Yeah, it's involvement in the gang activity, involvement in violence. It could be personal safety. It could be interpersonal relationships, and part of the decision-making model is offering students the tools to say, "Hey, I don't want to be involved in this," without jeopardizing their personal relationships with their peers and friends.
Isn't that a big issue with kids? They have at least one eye and one ear on their friends, and they don't want to jeopardize that. So, is it drugs these days, Frank? Is it other social issues? What's the main thing on the mind of the kids in schools today? Best that you can tell from talking to your D.A.R.E officers.
Yeah. So we went through. Unfortunately, it's ramping down pretty quickly, the vaping issue, which was pushed by tobacco industry. It was before that. We went through a few years of increased abuse of prescription and over-the-counter medications. And we were fortunate to be able to work with some very talented partners in developing curriculum that was specific to that. And a lot of that, unfortunately, was promoted by some very questionable websites that were providing advice to minors on what over-the-counter medications to take and what dosage. I can't conceive of personally of drinking 7 bottles of NyQuil and a pint of vodka. And some of these websites are actually giving you, age and body weight and telling you,
here's the right dosage, huh?
Yeah, here's
Get high.
It's just crazy. So there's a lot of intentional negative influences out there, as well as all what we went through growing up.
That's a great point. Talk about vaping, Frank. This has always confused me. And I think they try to act like vaping is not as bad as cigarettes. It's not going to hurt you, so why not do it? I don't know if they're doing it to get high. Is it a substitute for cigarettes, or is it a form of, do they smoke marijuana in the vape? I don't really get it.
So initially, the manufacturers and distributors pushed it as a safe way to enjoy the benefits of tobacco without smoking.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, just the thought of inhaling, boiling smoke doesn't make any sense. If you actually think about it. But the devices were designed so that illicit substances could be substituted for the tobacco products that came with the vape over the counter, and I don't think it was by accident. It's there's a huge industry behind the legalization movement. Most people are familiar with the marijuana industry, but quite honestly, I think it goes beyond that. It's a lot of it's driven by money, but some of it's other and bad intent as well.
What do the studies tell us about vaping? I mean, have any studies proven that it's as bad as cigarettes? It's going to get you lung cancer. You're going to have all kinds of health issues later in life. What's the information out there?
There's no positive associated. It's all negative. The medical profession will cite that there's no medicinal protocol that involves the equivalent of vaping medicine because of the damage that it does to the soft tissue in your mouth, in your throat, in your lungs. There's no positive to it. So the only positive to it is the advertising money that's been poured into it to make it seem that it's harmless and beneficial and so on.
I don't even know, is vaping legal at a certain age? Do you have to be a certain age to vape or to purchase vaping products?
Not really. And they're sold at convenience stores and gas stations. We've recently signed on and issued letters individually to Congress to try to put age requirements on access to the vape, to prohibit introduction and advertising of vape substances that are intentionally intended for the use of minors. With some of bubble gum flavor, or it's candy names, soda names that are you can tell they're not intentionally designed to be sold to adults. This is their next generation of customers that they're trying to entice into becoming addicted to the products.
Wow. So, Frank, I want to jump in. I want to ask you a quick question. Then I know Craig is going to ask you about how you got into law enforcement. We're going to jump into your career, some highlights about your career, some exciting moments, rewarding moments of your career. But before I turn this over to Craig, I want to ask you, for you, what was more rewarding, 26 years on the LAPD or 30 years in D.A.R.E?
Yeah, that is a hard question.
Yeah, which child do you like the best of your three children?
So with LAPD, I had the opportunity to work a significant number of assignments, probably more than the average person, an average cop. And when I retired and moved to D.A.R.E, it really wasn't a retirement. It was almost like another transfer. It was to another part of the PD. Every day I get to work with police officers from all around the world, all over the United States, and so it's really not. I didn't suffer the withdrawal some police officers experience when they leave law enforcement and move on to another career. It was just like picking up and moving from 77th Division to Southwest Division.
Right.
So it's I get to work with wonderful cops, and it's funny. It's when I started with D.A.R.E, I'm retired from the LAPD. I don't have to work, and my attitude's always been three bad days in a row, and I'll consider retiring again. 30 years later, I haven't had 3 bad days in a row. We haven't had it.
Oh,
that's good to hear.
That's amazing.
Hey, so Frank, we call this show Heroes Behind the Badge. All right. And I was so excited to have you as a guest because clearly, 56 years of work trying to help young people, especially being a mentor, trying to keep kids away from drugs, trying to help them make good decisions. I'm curious about what motivated you to go down that path. It was 1984, I think, during your police career in LAPD. Became one of the first D.A.R.E officers. And obviously there was something that piqued your interest to go down this path that you've been on for, 30 plus years at D.A.R.E and a lot more at the LAPD. Tell us about that. What motivated you originally to go down this path of helping young people stay away from drugs and make good decisions?
So in 84, my involvement with D.A.R.E began, and it was an indirect involvement. When Daryl Gates and the superintendent of LA Unified School District, Jerry Adler, decided to develop and implement a prevention education program, Chief Gates realized that if he waited for the city budgetary process to catch up, we'd be even further behind the curve than we were in 1984, 83. If the adult use of illicit substances had dramatically increased in the 70s, but kind of plateaued around 1980. But the trajectory of youth use was still increasing. And everybody recognized that if it wasn't stemmed, it would going to continue. Gates approached Dr. Handler. Handler was not only open to the idea, they had actually tried to implement substance abuse prevention education programs in the schools, but they had found that the students didn't give the classroom educators the credibility that was needed to support the program. The programs that they implemented. So they agreed to kind of switch tables and teach police officers how to function in the classroom. And there were some expenses involved. And the chief decided that we needed to somehow support the program as it was implemented in LA. And it was never intended to go anyplace other than that. There was no marketing program. There was no thought that this program was going to be taught in adjoining cities, let alone around the world. So we formed what was called the Los Angeles Police Department Crime Prevention Advisory Council, which were well-intended, well-respected citizens who wanted to support not only the D.A.R.E program, but a lot of other initiatives that the police department was involved in that weren't funded by the city. our SWAT team wasn't funded. So the Crime Prevention Advisory Council took to underwrite all of them expenses. So that was my initial involvement. Like most people involved with D.A.R.E, once you're introduced to it, it just draws you in. I mean, the kids are fantastic. In a lot of respects, from when I grew up, their childhood has been stolen from them. They don't get to experience a lot of things that I thought were positive in my childhood. It's just those things just don't exist anymore.
So Frank, Frank, can we jump into that? So when you're talking about childhood, these kids' childhoods and their experiences, everybody likes good stories and rewarding stories, or cop war stories. Let's talk about some of those. What are some of the most memorable stories where you personally were involved, or through D.A.R.E, that saved a kid, changed their lives? Maybe it was a punk kid that you influenced and he became a cop, or he became a doctor or something. Some of those kind of stories.
Well, to mind comes a young student, one of our officers in Ontario, Canada, Harry, and I had a special needs student. And there was a student that was non-communicative. They had an adult assistant assigned to the student at all times when they're in class. The student had not spoken all the way through kindergarten to the 6th grade. And part of the D.A.R.E program is completion of an essay. And the officers at the end of the course select those students with the best essay to be read in front of an assembly or classroom. And in this case, the essay that Harry judged to be the best was actually written by this child that hadn't spoken in their entire 6 years in school. It was kindergarten through 6th grade. So he got together with the teacher and the assistant for the student. And the student wanted to read their essay, and actually did read their essay at an assembly of all the school. And this is the first time the student had ever spoken in school. And it was to read the essay. I had an officer in the LAPD, Cynthia. One day, she just noticed the kids were just super clean. She couldn't move without students being almost on top of her. And the second day of this, the gang unit at Hollenbeck Division approached her to tell her that there had been an officer-involved shooting. The gang member was killed, and that they had decided that in retaliation they were going to take out a cop, and they decided that the best target would be a D.A.R.E officer because they're on the school, they're by themselves, and the peers of the gang members, their siblings, found out about this, and they were going to put themselves between the officer and their older gang member brothers and sisters to protect that officer, make sure she didn't get injured. So it's just every officer, every D.A.R.E officer has one of those stories for every semester within the classroom.
Wow. I have a question about the curriculum itself. I'm a big fan of curriculum, how things are presented. And from my research and preparation for this, I think there was a way that they used to do D.A.R.E and a way that they now do D.A.R.E. Let me tell you what I learned, and then you tell me if I'm right or wrong, okay? It used to be like almost a lecture, like a 50-minute lecture about the evils of drugs. And now, ever since you reinvented it, I think you call it keeping it real. It's the officer only speaks maybe 8 or 10 minutes, and then the kids get to participate. They get to role play. They get to get involved. Did I get that right or wrong?
Yeah. So the initial curriculum was 17 lessons, and each lesson was 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how much time that the officer had. And like you said, it was an information dump.
Right.
The officer got up there, and for 45 minutes, they were as somebody said, the sage on the stage. I mean, they just talk.
Yeah.
We went through several iterations of the scientific community, the prevention science community, actually developed or came about after the introduction of D.A.R.E. The Association for Prevention Research was founded 8 years after D.A.R.E. was founded.
Right.
And so as the prevention science industry is catching up, the results of the curriculum are what we hoped they would be. So we went through a lot of iterations of the curriculum. We went through some new curriculums that were developed. And then in 2007, we went in search of a curriculum that everybody recognized as being science and evidence-based. And this was in keeping it real curriculum that you mentioned, developed by researchers at Arizona State and Penn State University.
Wow.
We partnered with Penn State, and they licensed the curriculum to us. We've since been given the curriculum. The curriculum, as you said, to follow up, it really addresses decision-making and refusal skills rather than teaching kids specifically about the negative aspects of certain types of drugs. And the officers spend about 6, 7, 8 minutes beginning of the class, recapping the last week and introducing that topic for this week and providing the students with some information. And then the students work in what we call small cooperative learning groups to apply those decision-making skills to their actual experiences that they live through every day. So it's not the officer telling them, don't do this, don't do that. The students actually get to say, this is what happened to me yesterday. And, this is what I think is going to happen to me this afternoon. And with the other students, work through the decision-making model as to what approach that student may take.
Wow. So they actually get hands-on during that hour-long period. It's you said a 10-hour or a 10-week curriculum?
It's 10 weeks, the core curriculum, but we're talking about vaping.
Yeah.
As in the past, when a new issue arose, the original curriculum was 17 weeks long, and that's about the number of weeks that were in the traditional school semester. So as a new topic came up, the only way you could introduce it was take something out. And so over the years, the threads between among the lessons had been destroyed. So with the new curriculum, it's 10 lessons. And what we've created is a system of what we call enhancement lessons. So as a new topic comes up, like vaping, we can actually develop lessons that follow the core curriculum that can be introduced as enhancement lessons. The students don't know that they've transitioned from the core curriculum into additional lessons.
Right.
And the school and the police department can decide which lessons, enhancement lessons, are appropriate for that community. For vaping, we work with people from Stanford and Kaiser Permanente. We have lessons on teen mental health and suicide prevention that we work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So we're able to work with some very talented and special people to come up with those enhancement lessons. And we'll see a lot of places. So I'll read or hear about the student graduating from their 16-week D.A.R.E. program. And I know, they've not only done the core lessons, but they've added 6 supplemental lessons and enhancement lessons in that school.
What does this
Frank,
grade level? I mean, do you give it to all grades, or is it a certain grade level that gets it?
So in elementary school, the ideal grade level is the exit grade level. And so it depends on how the schools are organized. It could be 5th or 6th grade. Middle school, ideally, it's the entry grade level, and high school, the entry grade level.
Frank, you talk about teen suicide. To me, this is maybe one of the biggest issues that we need to be concerned about with young people. There seems to be a real increase in teen suicide. I don't have all the data, perhaps you do. what is the cause of this increase in teen suicide? What's happening in the schools or with young people that's creating this very serious problem, this crisis really that we're facing, and how can we prevent it?
Yeah, but I don't know that there's a single answer. There's probably as many answers as there are in many incidents. I don't think it's just awareness of the suicides. Personally, I think there's more. The pressures that the teens experience today are just so much different than what I experienced as a teenager. There's so much there's so much bad information on the internet that would convince somebody that suicide's an alternative way to solve your problems. There's so much opportunity for negative peer pressure to cause people to not only develop suicide ideations but carry them out. We don't offer a suicide prevention course. What we offer is information about suicidal ideations and the resources that are available to students. And we actually have students come to the officer after that class and say that they need a referral. We had one incident where the student actually planned to commit suicide that day on the school ground. We've had a classroom educator in the classroom that sat through the lesson who approached the officer after the lesson and said they needed a referral. And this lesson is taught in conjunction with the community representatives of the Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So it's just, it's real. It's an increased reality. And it's tragic. Not only for the student, but
I think we've seen some really high profile cases around the country lately in regards to that. And a lot of it has to do with the internet, and it has to do with, foreign actors in other countries that are posing as whomever, a young girl, a young boy, depending on the situation. And they're extorting them and exploiting them and doing all these things, shaming them to the point where, okay, well, we're going to send all this stuff to everybody at your school and all your friends and your parents and this whole big business. And like you mentioned, as a kid, you didn't have that. We didn't have that, on the internet. And so I guess in furtherance of what Craig asked about that, is that something that D.A.R.E delves into now about computer safety and how to go about dealing with that?
Yeah, we deal with online safety, personal communication device safety, and security. Not just safety, but security. It's keeping up with technology. Unbelievable. I sat through a lecture. I served on one of the committees at IACP, and we had a presentation at the mid-year conference about child predators using drones to monitor the activity of the targets while they're going back and forth from school or while they're at their homes in the backyard. So actually spying on them with drones. It's
I saw a video one day not too long ago, and literally they're telling the kid to kill themselves. Telling them you're not worth it. You're a piece of shit, whatever it was, exactly how to go kill yourself, and you need to go do it right now. I was like, wow, that's unbelievable.
Okay,
it's out there, and it's not hidden. That's the unfortunate part, and that's what a lot of kids are looking at. It's just
you intrigued me with a statement you made a while back, which really got my attention. We teach kids how to make decisions. I like that. Can you expound on that a little bit? How do you give them a framework or a series of questions, or how do you do that?
So we use the acronym D.A.R.E to represent 4 stages of decision making. D would be define. So define the situation you're in.
Right.
What am I faced with? Assess your situation. What choices do I have? What directions can I take? Are you going to respond? You make a decision. And the most important one is evaluate. After you've made that decision, step back, look around. Was it the right decision? If not, how am I going to correct course? And in most situations, it can be corrected. Unless it's, unless there's been some kind of a criminal act or a death of some type, you can correct that action somehow, some way. Blame your D.A.R.E officer if you need to.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, I don't know about Craig and Billy. I never had any curriculum like that when I was in school. How you make decisions can be applied to anything, to suicide, to drug use, to gang involvement, go through the list. To me, that sounds like the core essence of D.A.R.E. Am I overstating?
Not at all. And it's the decision-making model itself. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple, 4 steps, and it's being adopted by a lot of educational institutions, a lot of industries. I noticed the other day one of the departments within Virginia, the state of Virginia, has published a guide for seniors that are transitioning to retirement, and they use the D.A.R.E decision-making model for some of the decisions that people make relative to their retirement, transitioning to that retirement. So it's not exclusive to substances. It's not exclusive to high risk situations. It can deal with any aspect of your life. But just to get the students to slow down. They're not a decision. Rarely is there a decision that you need to make that you can't work through a decision-making model. Take a couple of minutes, work through it, and save yourself a lot of grief.
Do you get any feedback at all from the kids on that? Do they understand how critical that is, or maybe not yet? Or what's your feedback?
It's the feedback is positive, and it's long-lasting. And when I was thinking about this the other day, I can remember, D.A.R.E officers, it's a coveted position. You're working, if you're a full-time D.A.R.E officer, you barely come to the station. You're out in the field all the time. And I would see D.A.R.E officers, in April, May, coming back to the station, looking through their records. They've got a high school graduation announcement from a student, and they're trying to place the student. And it'll be a student that they had in the 5th grade that had to remember that officer, what that officer meant to them, and wants them to participate in the high school graduation. I had officers that were invited to weddings. So I had officers receive birth notifications. But I was standing with, and this was probably after 2000, I was standing at the intersection of Century and Los Angeles Boulevard with a former D.A.R.E officer, Scott Gilliam. And this young lady was walking across the street, and she saw Scott's D.A.R.E pin. And she asked him if she knew his D.A.R.E officer, Scott Gilliam. And she didn't recognize him because he was now about 30 years older than he had been. Right. But she actually remembered his name and wanted to know if he knew Scott.
Maybe it was Scott.
Maybe
he didn't let on that he was Scott, but he said he did know Scott. but that's not an uncommon. That's not an uncommon question that I received. I'll be traveling someplace and I have my D.A.R.E pin. I'll ask if I know Officer so and so, and this will be somebody that was in their classroom. These are young adults that are asking this. It's been 15, 16 years since they had that having changed with experience with them officers.
Frank spent 26 years with the Los Angeles Police Department and 30 more running D.A.R.E. In part 2, hear what police work costs the people who do it and what a classroom gives back.
The loss of those fellow officers certainly it's pretty hard to compare that with anything other than a loss of a family member.
And the researcher whose work built the case that D.A.R.E. didn't work and what changed his mind. Here's Behind the Badge is produced by Citizens Behind the Badge. You can learn more or support the work at citizensbehindthebadge.org.